stopped and thought about what money actually is? I mean, at its core, it's just a tool we invented, right? A system we built to deal with the fact that there isn't enough of everything to go around. But what happens when that basic idea, scarcity, starts to disappear? Today, we're diving into a pretty wild idea, a future where money just isn't the main thing that makes our world go round.
Now, I know it sounds like something straight out of science fiction, but this isn't about some sudden apocalyptic collapse. It's about a slow, gradual shift, and it's being driven by a force that's already changing everything: artificial intelligence. So the real question isn't if it could happen, but what would a post-monetary world actually look and feel like? And how in the world could we get there from here?
Okay, so let's really unpack this vision. This quote from the Cadmus Journal, it's not just about ditching cash and credit cards. It's about building a completely different type of society from the ground up. A world where your value as a person has nothing to do with your paycheck, and where our entire focus shifts to well-being and making progress together.
So yeah, a world without money, it sounds a little utopian, maybe a little crazy, but the idea is actually rooted in some very real trends we're seeing today in tech and economics. The basic concept is this: as technology like AI and robotics automates more and more labor and creates a ton of resources, the actual need for money as we know it could just fade away.
Right, so at the very heart of this is a huge shift from scarcity to abundance. Just try to imagine it. A system where getting the things you need, food, housing, healthcare, doesn't depend on how much you earn. Instead, all that human creativity and energy, supercharged by technology, is available to everyone. Your reason for getting up in the morning would totally change, right? It wouldn't be about survival anymore. It would be about a desire to create, to contribute, and to find your own purpose.
So what's the magic ingredient that could create this much abundance? Well, all the research points to one incredibly powerful engine: artificial intelligence. The economic tsunami that AI is promising is just staggering, and it's really the bedrock of this entire post-monetary idea. But as we're about to see, that power is a double-edged sword.
Let's just talk numbers for a second, because they're pretty mind-blowing. A forecast from PwC suggests that AI could add up to $15.7 trillion to the global economy by 2030. To put that in perspective, that's more than the entire current economic output of China and India combined. We're not talking about a little bump here. This is a complete rewiring of the global economy.
And here's the other side of that same coin. Goldman Sachs estimates that the current wave of AI could replace the equivalent of 300 million full-time jobs around the world. This really hammers home the massive disruption we're talking about. It's not just about creating new wealth. It's about fundamentally changing what it even means to have a job.
Okay, so let's break down where that massive $15.7 trillion number is supposed to come from. If you look here, yeah, $6.6 trillion is for making things more efficient and automating stuff we already do. But look at the bigger piece of the pie. A whopping $9.1 trillion is expected to come from creating brand new markets and services that don't even exist yet, all powered by AI. This suggests that AI's biggest game changer might not be just doing old jobs better, but inventing entirely new ways to create value.
But here is the central paradox, the real catch. The very same technology that promises this incredible future of freedom and abundance, well, it also poses this quiet but very real threat to our own autonomy, to our ability to make our own choices. There's this growing worry that as we hand over more of our thinking to algorithms, we risk becoming trapped, easily manipulated, and maybe even dumber.
Let's look at the workplace, for instance. We're seeing this big shift from a human boss to an algorithmic one. Your human manager might, use empathy and understand the context of a situation. An algorithm, it just sees data. It runs on pure efficiency and surveillance. And the research shows this can lead to workers being treated like, and I quote, statistical entities. It reduces their hard work to just data points, and that chips away at their dignity and their freedom.
This diagram here really shows the kind of feedback loop we're stuck in. See, AI isn't developed in some sterile lab. It directly influences our society and culture, which in turn changes who has power and who doesn't. That then affects how we see ourselves, which ultimately decides what kind of AI we build next. It's a powerful reminder that this technology is never neutral. It's always a mirror reflecting our own values and choices.
And that brings us to this really key concept called computational capitalism. This is the economic engine driving the potential dark side of AI. It's a system where basically our entire lives, every click, every conversation, every like, gets turned into data. It becomes a raw resource. And that data is then chewed up by algorithms, not to help us, but to make a profit.
So how does this actually play out in our lives? Well, first you've got algorithmic manipulation.
Just think about your social media feed, designed to be as addictive as a slot machine. Then there's something called moral de-skilling. The more we let AI make decisions for us, the weaker our own ability to make good judgments becomes. We're also facing a huge loss of privacy, with surveillance becoming the default setting, especially at work. And finally, you've got automated bias, where algorithms can take the prejudices that already exist in our society and just pour gasoline on them, scaling them up massively.
This quote from an anonymous expert who designs these systems is, honestly, it's pretty chilling, because it points the finger right back at us. It's just so convenient, isn't it? Letting a black box tell you what to watch, or the fastest route to drive, or who you should date. But you have to wonder, in our rush for convenience, are we just willingly handing over the keys to our own minds?
Okay, so on one hand, we have this incredible potential for a world of abundance, but on the other, this really serious threat to our own freedom. But look, this is not a done deal. The future isn't written yet. The research actually points to several different paths we could take, alternative ideas we can explore to try and steer this ship toward a more human-friendly destination.
So what are some of these alternative models? Well, a few ideas keep popping up in the research. Things like universal basic income, or UBI, which would give everyone a basic financial floor. Then there's a less common idea called distributism. And finally, a new way of governing called augmented democracy, which would use technology to give citizens a much more direct say in decisions.
Let's spend a second on distributism, because it's a fascinating idea that's basically the exact opposite of computational capitalism. See, it's not about taking wealth from the rich and giving it to the poor after the fact. It's about distributing the tools for creating wealth, the factories, the software, the AI systems themselves, to as many people as possible from the start. The whole point is to break up the concentration of economic power and give it back to individuals and their local communities.
Look, you don't just flip a switch and end up in a post-money world. The Cadmus Journal actually lays out a pretty gradual two-step roadmap. The first step is the preparatory phase. These are things we could be doing right now, like beefing up the sharing economy or testing out new voting tech on a local level. The second phase is more aspirational, long-term stuff. We're talking about achieving a totally waste-free economy, and maybe even moving to a single global currency that's only used for massive planet-wide projects like space exploration.
Ultimately, this all boils down to a choice. The technology, the AI, it doesn't have a mind of its own. It's not our destiny. The kind of future we get, whether it's a post-monetary utopia or some automated dystopia, is going to be decided by the rules we write and the values we choose to code into these systems, starting today.
And this really gets to the absolute core of the challenge ahead. The new dividing line in our society might not be rich versus poor in the old sense. Instead, it could be between the people who have the power to design, own, and control these incredible AI systems, and the rest of us, who are simply managed by them.
Which brings us right to the final question, the one that this whole explainer leaves you with. Are we going to use this incredible technology to create shared prosperity for all of humanity, or are we going to let it become a tool to concentrate even more wealth and power into the hands of a tiny few? That is the defining question of our time. And honestly, the choices we all make in the next few years will probably be the answer.